The room falls silent as I walk to the center of the stage. No introduction needed. Just raw truth waiting to be shared. Have you ever noticed how life has this fascinating way of teaching us its most valuable lessons through our deepest wounds? Those moments when we're face down in the dirt, feeling the full weight of our mistakes crushing down on our shoulders, those are the moments that shape us, not the victories, not the celebrations. You see, I've spent countless hours studying the human spirit, and I've discovered something remarkable. Every single person in this room right now is carrying a failure that they believe defines them, a moment they wish they could erase, a decision they'd give anything to take back. You're nodding because you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? But here's what fascinates me, what absolutely blows my mind. It's not the failure that defines you. It's what you do next. That next breath you take after hitting rock bottom. That next step you force yourself to take when everything inside you is screaming to give up. That's what writes your story. Let me share something with you that might change the way you look at failure forever. Every morning, millions of people wake up and immediately start running from their failures. They bury them deep, hide them away, pretend they never happened. But what if I told you that your biggest failure, that thing you're most ashamed of, could become the foundation of your greatest achievement? You're sitting there thinking, that's impossible. You don't know my failure. You don't know how bad it was. And you're right, I don't. But what I do know is this: the size of your failure is directly proportional to the size of your potential breakthrough. Think about that for a moment. The deeper the hole you've dug yourself into, the higher the mountain you can build from that dirt. It's not just positive thinking. It's physics. It's nature. It's the fundamental law of transformation. Have you ever watched a butterfly emerge from its cocoon? Scientists once tried to help a butterfly by carefully cutting open its cocoon, thinking they were doing it a favor. Do you know what happened? The butterfly died. Why? Because the struggle to break free from the cocoon is what forces fluid into the butterfly's wings, making them strong enough to fly. The very thing that looks like a struggle, that looks like failure, is the exact thing creating the strength needed for success. Your failures are your cocoon. Your struggles are your strengthening. But here's the key. You have to stop seeing failure as your enemy and start seeing it as your trainer, your teacher, your path to transformation. I want you to do something right now. Close your eyes. Think about your biggest failure, that one that makes your stomach turn, that one that still keeps you up at night. You got it. Now, instead of pushing it away like you usually do, I want you to feel its weight. Feel its presence, because we're about to transform it into your greatest teacher. You see, failure isn't just an event. It's information. Rich, valuable, priceless information. When you failed, you didn't just lose something. You gained access to a treasure trove of wisdom that success could never teach you. But most people never unlock this wisdom because they're too busy running from the failure itself. Let me ask you something. What if every great success story you've ever heard was actually a failure story in disguise? What if the only difference between a stepping stone and a stumbling block is how you use it? Consider this as a single day. We're surrounded by things that started as massive failures. Did you know that the pacemaker, a device that has saved millions of lives, was invented by accident when its creator was trying to record heart sounds and used the wrong resistor? He failed at his original goal, but stumbled upon something far more valuable. But it's not just about inventions or business successes. It's about life, real life, your life. The parent who failed their child and transformed that pain into becoming the mentor they wished they'd had. The entrepreneur who lost everything and used those lessons to build something even more meaningful. The student who failed their exams but discovered their true calling in the process. These aren't just nice stories. They're blueprints. They're proof that failure isn't final unless you decide it is. But here's what makes the difference. These people didn't just move on from their failures. They moved through them. They didn't just survive their failures. They studied them And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to dive deep into the anatomy of failure and success. We're going to uncover the hidden patterns that turn devastation into dominance, setbacks into comebacks, and wounds into wisdom. But I need to warn you, this journey isn't for everyone. Some people prefer the comfort of their familiar pain over the discomfort of transformation. Some would rather carry their failures like badges of victimhood instead of using them as badges of honor. If that's you, if you're not ready to turn your greatest shame into your greatest strength, then maybe this message isn't for you. But if you're still here, if something inside you is resonating with these words, then you're ready. Ready to learn the art of alchemical transformation, turning the lead of your failures into the gold of your greatest achievements. You see, most people think success is about avoiding failure. They've got it backwards. Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about transforming it. It's about taking that energy of defeat and redirecting it into determination. Taking that moment of humiliation and turning it into a moment of humility. Taking that experience of loss and transforming it into a lesson in leadership. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, in this room, there are people who have failed at relationships, failed at business, failed at health goals, failed at personal dreams. But what if, and this is a big, what if those failures weren't actually failures at all? What if they were simply the first drafts of your success story? Think about writing a book. No author sits down and writes a perfect first draft. It's impossible. The first draft is meant to be messy, full of mistakes, riddled with problems. But here's the key. Without that messy first draft, there cannot be a masterpiece final draft. Your failures are your first drafts. They're not meant to be perfect. They're meant to be stepping stones. But here's where most people get it wrong. They treat failure like it's permanent ink on the pages of their lives. They see it as a permanent mark, a scar that can't be healed, a story that can't be rewritten. But failure isn't written in permanent ink. It's written in pencil, and you hold the eraser, not to erase the failure itself. No, that stays. Those lessons are too valuable to erase. But you can erase the meaning you've assigned to that failure. You can erase the story you've been telling yourself about what that failure means about you as a person. You failed at a business? That doesn't make you a failure at business. It makes you an expert in what doesn't work. And knowing what doesn't work is halfway to knowing what does work. You failed at a relationship? That doesn't make you unlovable. It makes you more aware of what real love looks like and what it doesn't look like. Every failure you've experienced has been preparing you for a level of success you couldn't have handled without that preparation. But you have to be willing to see it that way. You have to be willing to mine your failures for the gold that's hidden within them. Here's the beautiful truth about failure that nobody tells you. It's the only path to authentic success. Not the kind of success that looks good on paper, but the kind that resonates in your soul. The kind that lasts. The kind that matters. You know why most people never achieve their dreams? It's not because they're not talented enough. It's not because they're not smart enough. It's because they're not willing to fail enough. They're not willing to look foolish enough. They're not willing to be uncomfortable enough. Let me share something profound with you. Every single person who's ever achieved anything meaningful has failed more times than the average person has even tried. Think about that for a moment. The difference between average and exceptional isn't talent. It's tolerance for failure, tolerance for temporary defeat, tolerance for looking less than perfect while you figure things out. But here's where it gets really interesting. The way you handle failure isn't just about resilience, it's about recognition. Recognition of the patterns, recognition of the lessons, recognition of the opportunities hidden within every defeat. Have you ever noticed how some people can go through exactly the same failure as someone else, but come out of it completely different? One person is destroyed by it, while another is developed by it. What's the difference? It's not the failure. It's the framework, the mental framework they use to process and perceive that failure. Let me give you a tool right now that will transform how you look at failure forever. I call it the 3 R's of failure transformation. First, recognize Most people try to run from failure so fast, they never actually stop to understand what really happened. They're so busy escaping the pain that they miss the lesson. But you can't transform what you don't understand. You need to look your failure in the eye, study it, analyze it, not with shame, but with curiosity, not with judgment, but with genuine interest. Ask yourself, what exactly went wrong? Not who's to blame. That's not the point. What specifically didn't work? What assumptions did you make that turned out to be incorrect? What signals did you miss? What patterns can you identify? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about beating the pattern. Because here's the truth. Failure is rarely random. It's usually the result of specific patterns of thinking and behavior. Find the pattern and you find the power to change it. Second, reframe. This is where the magic happens. This is where you take that failure and change its meaning. Remember, events don't have meaning until we assign meaning to them. Your failure is not a verdict. It's raw material. It's not an ending. It's a beginning. But only if you choose to see it that way. When you got rejected, was that really failure? Or was it redirection to something better? When you lost everything, was that really the end? Or was it the universe clearing the deck for something new? When you hit rock bottom, did you really fail? Or did you just discover what your foundation needs to be built on? I want you to think about something that you consider a massive failure in your life right now. Got it. Now, I want you to find 3 ways that this failure might actually be setting you up for success. 3 ways this apparent defeat might be preparing you for victory. They're there, I promise you, but you have to be willing to look for them. Maybe that business failure taught you invaluable lessons about what customers really want. Maybe that relationship failure showed you what you really need in a partner. Maybe that personal failure revealed strengths you never knew you had. Third, redirect. This is where you take the energy of failure and point it in a new direction. Failure creates energy, lots of it. Pain creates power. Defeat creates drive, but only if you redirect it properly. Think about martial arts. The fundamental principle of many martial arts isn't about meeting force with force. It's about redirecting the opponent's energy. That's what we're doing with failure. We're not fighting it. We're redirecting its energy toward our new goals. When you fail, you generate massive emotional energy. Most people waste this energy on regret, self-blame, or trying to figure out who else they can blame. But what if you took all that energy and redirected it into learning, into growing, into building something new? This is where real transformation begins. This is where failures become fuel. This is where setbacks become setups for comebacks. But you have to be intentional about it. You have to be strategic. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Success doesn't come from avoiding failure. Success comes from failing better, failing smarter, failing forward. Every time you fail, you have a choice. You can let that failure define you, or you can let it refine you. You can let it stop you, or you can let it teach you. But here's what nobody tells you about failure. It's not just about learning lessons. It's about building character. It's about developing the kind of internal strength that can't be taken away from you. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle the success when it comes. You see, success without the character development that comes from handling failure, well, is usually temporary. It's fragile. It's shallow. But success that's built on transformed failure, that's unshakable. That's sustainable. That's real. Think about diamonds for a moment. Do you know what creates a diamond? Pressure. Intense pressure. Without that pressure, it would just remain cold. Your failures are that pressure. They're not destroying you. They're transforming you. They're turning you into something more valuable, more beautiful, more unbreakable. But here's the catch. Just like a diamond doesn't form overnight, this transformation takes time. It takes patience. It takes persistence. Most importantly, it takes presence. You have to be present in your failure, present in your learning, present in your transformation. That's why running from failure never works. That's why numbing the pain of failure never helps. That's why blaming others for your failures keeps you stuck. You have to be present. You have to be engaged. You have to be willing to feel the full weight of the failure while simultaneously holding on to the vision of what it's creating in you. Let's talk about something that most people never consider, the anatomy of transformation, because turning failure into success isn't just about positive thinking, it's about positive action. It's about systematic transformation. You see, every failure contains within it the seeds of an equivalent or greater success. But you have to know how to plant those seeds. You have to know how to nurture them. You have to know how to harvest them when the time is right. The first step in this process is something I call emotional alchemy. This is where you take the raw emotions of failure, the disappointment, the shame, the anger, the fear, and transform them into something useful, something powerful, something productive. Most people let these emotions paralyze them. They get stuck in what I call the failure loop, replaying the failure over and over in their minds, each time feeling worse about themselves, each time becoming more convinced that they're not capable of success. But what if you could take that same emotional energy and redirect it? What if you could take that anger and turn it into determination? What if you could take that shame and turn it into humility? What if you could take that fear and turn it into focus? This isn't about denying these emotions. It's about directing them. It's about using them as fuel instead of letting them use you as a victim. Every emotion you feel after a failure is potential energy. The question is, what are you going to do with that energy? Let me give you a practical tool for this. The next time you feel the sting of failure, don't run from it. Don't try to numb it. Instead, ask yourself this question: what is this emotion trying to teach me? What power is hidden within this pain? If you're feeling anger, maybe that's the energy you need to make changes you've been putting off. If you're feeling shame, maybe that's the catalyst for developing genuine humility and wisdom. If you're feeling fear, maybe that's exactly the motivation you need to prepare better next time. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to skip the emotional part and go straight to the logical part. They try to analyze their failure before they process their feelings about it. That's like trying to read a book in the dark. You need emotional clarity before you can have intellectual clarity. That's why the most successful people I've studied don't just have high IQ. They have high EQ. They know how to process their emotions in a way that serves their growth instead of sabotaging it. Think about it this way. Every failure triggers two things: an emotional response and an opportunity for growth. Most people get so caught up in the emotional response that they completely miss the opportunity for growth. But what if you could use that emotional response as a spotlight to illuminate the opportunity? This brings us to the second major principle of failure transformation, what I call strategic extraction. This is where you mine your failure for everything valuable it contains. Because believe me, there's gold in that pain if you know how to extract. Every failure contains at least 7 types of valuable information. What didn't work and why? What assumptions were wrong? What you didn't know, you didn't know. What strengths you discovered under pressure? What weaknesses need attention? What relationships revealed themselves as genuine? What new opportunities emerged from the ashes? But here's the key. You have to look for all 7. Most people only look for 1 or 2. Usually focusing on what went wrong and who's to blame. But that's like finding a gold mine and only mining for copper. You're missing the most valuable elements. Let me show you how this works in practice. Think about your most recent failure. Now, instead of just focusing on what went wrong, ask yourself these questions. What did this failure reveal about my preparation that I can improve? What skills did I discover I need to develop? What connections or resources did I learn I need to build? What parts of my approach actually worked, even though the overall outcome wasn't what I wanted? What did I learn about myself that I never would have learned otherwise? What doors closed? And more importantly, what new doors opened because of this failure? What beliefs about myself or the world did this failure challenge or confirm? You see, when you start asking these questions, something magical happens. The failure stops being just a painful event and starts becoming a valuable teacher. It stops being something that happened to you and starts being something that happened for you. But there's a third principle that's equally important, what I call immediate integration. This is where you take what you've learned and immediately begin applying it. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready. Now, most people make the mistake of waiting until they feel confident again before taking action. But here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence comes from action. Small actions consistently taken rebuild confidence faster than any amount of positive thinking. That's why I want you to do something right now. I want you to take out your phone or a piece of paper and write down one specific action you're going to take in the next 24 hours based on what you've learned from your biggest failure. Not a vague intention, not a general goal, a specific concrete action that you can complete in 24 hours or less. Because here's what I've learned. The gap between failure and success is bridged by small actions, not grand gestures. Think about it. Every major transformation in history, whether personal or global, started with one small action, one decision, one moment where someone decided to turn their pain into power, their failure into fuel, their setback into a setup for something greater. You're sitting here right now, and you might be thinking, but you don't understand how big my failure was. You don't understand how much I've lost. You don't understand how many times I've tried and failed. You're right. I don't understand the specifics of your situation. But what I do understand is this. The size of your failure is directly proportional to the size of your opportunity for transformation. The deeper the wound, the greater the wisdom it can yield. The bigger the setback, the bigger the comeback it can fuel. This brings us to perhaps the most crucial understanding about failure and success, what I call the transformation triangle. You see, every failure gives you 3 distinct opportunities. Most people only see one, some see 2. But the real magic happens when you harness all 3. The first opportunity is personal growth. This is the obvious one. The lessons learned, the skills developed, the wisdom gained. But even here, most people barely scratch the surface. They learn the surface lessons but miss the deeper transformations available to them. When you fail, you don't just learn what doesn't work. You learn who you are under pressure. You learn what you're really made of. You learn what matters to you when everything else is stripped away. This kind of self-knowledge is priceless, but only if you're willing to look for it. The second opportunity is connection depth. Every failure has the potential to deepen your connections with others, if you let it. Think about it. When do you really know who your true friends are? When you're succeeding or when you're failing? When you develop the deepest bonds with others? When everything's perfect or when you're going through challenges together? Your failures give you the opportunity to develop authentic relationships. They give you the chance to show others that it's okay to be imperfect, that it's okay to struggle, that it's okay to fail. You create space for real connection, not just surface level interaction. But the third opportunity is the one most people miss completely: legacy creation. Your failures, when transformed properly, don't just serve you, they serve others. They become part of your story, part of your message, part of what you give to the world. Think about the most inspiring stories you know. Aren't they all at their core stories of overcoming failure, stories of transformation, stories of turning pain into power? Your failures, when transformed, become the story that someone else needs to hear to keep going. They become the hope that someone else needs to hold on to when they're facing their own failures. But here's what's crucial to understand. These opportunities don't present themselves automatically. You have to actively look for them. You have to intentionally create them. You have to purposefully transform them. Let me share something powerful with you, something that changed my entire perspective on failure. Every failure you experience is actually testing your readiness for success. It's not testing your ability. It's testing your character. It's not testing your talent. It's testing your tenacity. It's not testing your knowledge. It's testing your resilience. When you start seeing failure this way, everything changes. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this preparing me for? Instead of saying, I can't handle this, you start saying, this is handling me. This is shaping me into someone stronger. But let's get practical for a moment. Let's talk about the actual process of turning your biggest failure into your greatest win. Because this isn't just about feeling better, it's about doing better. It's not just about changing your perspective, it's about changing your performance. First, you need to understand that every failure has a feedback loop. Most people get stuck in the negative feedback loop, where failure leads to fear, which leads to hesitation, which leads to more failure. But you can create a positive feedback loop, where failure leads to learning, which leads to growth, which leads to better attempts, which leads to eventual success. The key is in how you process each failure. Instead of asking, why did I fail? Start asking, how can I fail better next time? Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Start asking, what's next for me? Instead of asking, how long will this pain last? Start asking, how can I use this pain to last longer in my next attempt? This brings us to what I call the failure acceleration principle. Most people think that success comes from minimizing failure. But what if the opposite is true? What if the fastest path to success is actually through accelerated failure? What if the goal isn't to fail less, but to fail faster, fail smarter, and fail forward? Think about learning to ride a bike. How do you learn? By trying to avoid falling. No, you learn by falling, adjusting, and trying again. Each fall teaches you something about balance. Each failure moves you closer to mastery. The kids who learn the fastest aren't the ones who fall the least. They're the ones who get back up the same principle applies to everything in life. Want to build a successful business? Fail faster? Test more ideas? Launch more products? Get more feedback? Want to build better relationships? Be willing to be vulnerable faster? Share more authentically? Risk rejection more often? Want to achieve your dreams? Be willing to fail more frequently in pursuit of them. But here's the key. It's not just about failing more. It's about failing better. Each failure should be more sophisticated than the last. Each setback should teach you something new. Each defeat should move you closer to victory. This is where most people get stuck. They keep failing at the same level, making the same mistakes, repeating the same patterns. But true transformation comes from elevating your failures, from failing at higher and higher levels, from making new mistakes instead of repeating old ones. Remember this, the quality of your failure determines the quality of your success. If you're going to fail, and you are, because everyone does, fail magnificently. Fail pushing your boundaries. Fail growing, stretching, reaching for something meaningful. As we come to the close of our time together, I want to leave you with this final thought. Right now, in this room, there are two types of people. There are those who will leave here and continue to run from failure, continue to hide from it, continue to let it diminish them. And there are those who will leave here and start seeing failure differently, start using failure differently, start transforming failure differently. The choice is yours. But remember this, every great success story started with a failure story. Every breakthrough began with a breakdown. Every victory was preceded by defeat. The only question is, what story are you going to write with your failures? You have everything you need right now to start transforming your biggest failure into your greatest win. You have the tools, you have the understanding, you have the power. The only question is, do you have the courage? The courage to face your failures honestly. The courage to learn from them deeply. The courage to transform them completely. Because here's the truth. Your next level of success is not waiting for you to become perfect. It's waiting for you to become powerful. And that power comes from transformed failure. It comes from knowing that you can fail and rise, fall and recover, lose and learn. That's not just resilience, that's transformation. So take your failures, all of them. Take your setbacks, your defeats, your disappointments, and instead of seeing them as weights that hold you down, start seeing them as weights that build you up. Start seeing them as the raw material for your greatest achievements. Start seeing them as the foundation for your future success. Because in the end, it's not about avoiding failure. It's about transforming it. It's not about escaping pain. It's about using it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being powerful. And that power comes from knowing that every failure you face can become fuel for your greatest victories. The choice is yours. The time is now. The transformation awaits. What will you do with it?